You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cricket Podcast for our Q&A episode, mainly focused on the World Cup. I'm Jack Hope. There's Max, still the same people as in part one. But it's nice to do a mid-show reintroduction in case you've forgotten.
It happens.
So, there you go, it happened. Max, we're going to get over to Twitter now, and we're going to run through, I think we've got 8 or 9, maybe 10 questions.
You mean X, formerly known as Twitter?
Whatever, I'm going to call it Twitter. I don't care about that. Idiot. What do you guys think of South Africa's World Cup chances, considering their strong bowling and batsmen like Klaasen, Markram, de Kock, Miller, all of whom can play spin very well, as well as having a good record in India? And they've got all-rounders, Jansen, Peflekwayu, and Maharaj can bat too. So I actually am still quite hot on South Africa. I think they might not be top 4, but they're definitely one of the other teams that could make top 4. So I think they've got a good chance. That's what I would say. What do you reckon, Max?
Yeah, I think I would have had them sort of poking at the top 4 with Nortje. I think with the injury, possibly not. But yeah, we said before, they're a good side. They've got some really exciting batting, really good bowling. They're good. I think they'll cause problems.
Yeah, I mean, I think their one weakness is maybe another tempo batter. So we talked about this the other day. They have Bavuma, they've got Markram. It would be nice, I think, if they had another guy who could bat in the top 4, strike at 85 to 95, and average more than 40.
Yeah, and I don't think they've decided who's going to fill that role. Have they?
Yeah, it's a big ask. But, what they could do with is Virat Kohli. You know what I mean. Somebody just even if they only average 35,
could lend them James Vince.
Well, I mean, somebody of that kind of ilk. So the Klaasen was in a particular role where he regularly came in after 30 overs, like Butler for England, and then I think they'd be golden. But I think they've definitely got it in them to put together a string of victories, and the bowling looks good. So yeah, I quite like South Africa. I'm looking forward to watching them play. I think that'll be quite exciting. Pranav says, are you guys doing a team-by-team squad analysis for India and other teams? Ayush says something similar. So I think we can give the thumbs up to that. Like it's research weekend coming up, isn't it? And we will be recording previews next week. They'll be dropping on YouTube in individual episodes. So make sure you subscribe there. And we'll probably put them in like groups of 3 or 4 or 5 maybe on our podcast channel for you to have a listen to. It'll be 15, 20 minutes per team. I think we decided on the format as well. We'll talk about captains, coaches, star players, probable 11s, chances in the tournament, the road to the World Cup for the individual sides, and of course the national animal or animal that we have chosen that best represents each team. So we look forward to doing those episodes. Hangover, I'm going to have one of those tomorrow. Says, how much is the ideal squad size for a long tournament? Max, what's your shout on this? So it's 15, if you don't know, for the Cricket World Cup.
I'd add 3. 18. That's a number I'd go with. Not based on any science or anything. It just feels about right.
Yeah, I agree. I think 18 is about what they name for bilateral series. I think that you want, like, let's say, I mean, this might not be how teams line up. You've got 5 specialist batters. You've got a wicket keeper. You've got an all-rounder of some description, let's say a seam bowling all-rounder just to help with it, a spinner and 3 seamers. Now in India, that might not be how teams line up. It might go a bit more spin heavy. If you've got all-rounders, obviously it messes things up. And if you've got guys who can bat in the top 5, who can bowl and who bat in the top 5, that changes things as well. But something like that. Now you've got to think about what the reasonable replacements for that 11 are. We need a spare wicket keeper. You need a spare seam bowler, probably 2 spare seam bowlers. You need a spare spinner. And this is just to cover injuries.
Yeah, and that's it. That's your squad.
That's the squad. That's your squad, and that really limits the choices that a lot of teams can make. And I think it would be better if you had 3 more, so you could have proper specialist openers in your squad on reserve, proper specialist batters on your squad in reserve, and a flex, to borrow a term from fantasy NFL.
I was just thinking, fantasy, is a fantasy NFL squad bigger than 15?
I think it's probably about that, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
it just seems a little bit tight, and I don't really see what the advantage is as well. I want to see the best tournament possible. I don't want to see players playing when they're tired or injured, and I don't want to see kind of bits and pieces players selected because they can fill multiple gaps when there are specialist players sitting at home watching on the TV. Like it makes no sense to me why you would do that for a World Cup, but here we are. It's cricket. Kishan says. The way England played in 2015 with so many changes in the squad, losing to Bangladesh, which team could be like that in 2023 between the top 5 or 6 nations? So I am going to say for this that I think it's a little bit hard for that to happen in this format. I think the format favours the stronger teams because it means that you can basically lose 2 or maybe even 3 matches and still make it to the playoffs. Which means the potential for an upset. What was it, Nasser Hussain and the Tigers have beaten the Lions of it, or the Bangladesh Tigers have beaten the England Lions, or the Lions of England, or something like that. It was a good line. It was an iconic line that I've obviously not that iconic, but because I can't remember it. But I think with the sort of 3, I think it was a 3-match group stage for that World Cup. Obviously, the chances for an upset are much higher. 9 matches, I think it's harder. Having said that, I think New Zealand are going to be the flop of this tournament. So I don't know whether you'd put them in the top 5 to begin with, but they were in the final of the last tournament. So I think
they are.
It's fair that they should have some expectations.
5th favourite, apparently.
So I'm saying New Zealand. I don't think they'll flop as badly. Like, I think that was quite a bad flop by England, but I think that New Zealand are probably past their peak.
They might flop. I don't know if it'll be because of chopping and changing though. I think they might just underperform.
Well, they've only got 12 players.
Pakistan are the side that are going to chop and change and mess it all up. Like
okay,
I'm looking at their squad, and honestly, I think they'll probably change their batting lineup 4 times in 9 games, and the bowling might not change as much, but they'll probably mix that up as well, and someone will come in and go for 90 off 8 overs or something. I reckon they're in for a shout of flopping.
Okay. Carrying on Twitter, and this is slightly away from the World Cup. India, the nation of India wants to know this. Why is cricket not popular in many countries like football? Can you explain that, Max?
I don't know. Do we want to go into colonialism here?
Well, I mean, I think that
is that a route to go down?
Yeah, I mean that it is. It does map, literally maps, where cricket is played with somebody's empire.
I mean, I think the thing with football is you find something round and you can play a game of football in the street. You can't do that with cricket, can you? There's you can play tape ball or whatever. You still need a bat and you still need enough space to do it. You can get 5 mates and have a kickabout in the street with any sort of football kind of thing, and it just makes it more accessible to anyone. And I think that's got to be part of it.
I think there's a level of rules knowledge required as well. Not high. I don't think it's prohibitive, but it's not as simple as kick it in that thing and don't use your hands.
Yeah,
which is basically football in a nutshell. Particularly if you're just sort of having a kicker out in the street. I think as well, there's probably a geographic element to this in that football passed into Europe quite easily on the back of effectively the Industrial Revolution and trade. That's why lots of football teams in Europe have got basically English names, because they were exported by industrialists. Add into that the weather isn't an issue and that space is much less of an issue to play it properly, and that you don't necessarily need kind of an established club, and that arguably, probably fairly, football was more of a working class game and could transfer through those channels a bit better than a sport like cricket. And I think you can see why it spread to Europe. And then if you look 150 years ago when football started to spread around the globe, where was the power center of the world? It was Europe. So the game gets popular in England, it gets exported to Europe, and it gets exported beyond there as a result. I think like that's a sort of a potted history to how football expanded, but probably not the same avenues for cricket because it just didn't become embedded in Spanish culture, for example. Like it's just not something that's really there. For Lee, Martin Lawrence, we'll do Martin Lawrence first. 2 questions. Do you think this will be the last one-day World Cup? And 2, if the World Cup does continue, what do you think is the ideal number of teams? So I've answered that in part 1. I think 14 for now is probably the best because I think that you can make a format 2 pools of 7. I think they did something like that for the 2003 World Cup. And I think that would work pretty well. Is it going to be the last World Cup though, Max? You can answer that one.
No, I don't think it will be the last one. It's a good question because ODI cricket becoming less and less relevant, isn't it? One day cricket in general, domestically becoming less and less relevant. Certainly in this country, the skills are they're becoming much more polarized, aren't they, towards T20 or Test match? I think we've seen sort of the number of ODIs England have played in between in bilaterals recently, and how much you actually read into those performances into when you pick a squad, because half the time you just pick a bunch of people who weren't in either the T20 or Test sides because they're all knackered. So that's definitely a consideration. I've been wondering whether whether the World Cup may end up following a format not too dissimilar from the Asia Cup, in which it flip-flops between T20 and ODI every cycle.
Ooh.
But
So
I don't think there's the appetite to cut out the T20 cricket element every so often for that to work. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a reduction in some way. Maybe an end to the World Cup, and they bring back the Champions Trophy as a sort of one.
Well, the Champions Trophy is still sort of a thing, isn't it? I think pretty categorically no is the answer to that. I think that the World Cup will continue. I think that the historical relevance of it will mean that it has a certain cachet, and that it's a product that you can market and sell, which are quite crucial to this. You have to remember as well that the ICC is effectively managing international franchise tournaments. That's what the World Cup, the T20 World Cup, the Champions Trophy, they are franchise tournaments, except that the franchises are international 11s. They're not kind of handpicked by.
Oh, you should be able to have like 2 slots for overseas players in your international squad. That'd be a laugh, wouldn't it?
Well, maybe there should be some sort of a draft. But and they're very, very profitable. Because people want their team to win the World Cup. There isn't another sort of World Cup. What does this mean for sort of ODIs? I think the bigger question is sort of how do you maintain the World Cup whilst the relevance of the ODI format is diminishing. I think that is a challenge. I think probably what happens is you just play less and less, and teams guess more and more for the actual World Cup, and it becomes a little bit of a the glory days of the World Cup are probably gone in terms of it being an elite format and a format where
like a fun lottery.
Well, yeah, maybe a little bit. Or there's a little bit of guesswork. I think even with this World Cup, very, very hard to know how some of these teams are going to come together. We think India are pretty good. I think you can make some good assumptions that's true. And it's probably fair to say England are quite good as well. And then there are like 6 teams where you're like, whoa, that does look quite good on paper. But we don't really know. It's we were talking about South Africa earlier. You can say the same for Oz. You can make a good argument for Pakistan. Bangladesh have had some decent results recently and have got some very high quality players playing in decent conditions. Sri Lanka, who knows what's going to happen with Sri Lanka. And New Zealand, even though I wrote them off 5 minutes ago, they were in the final of the last World Cup. So it's we actually just don't really know for a lot of these teams. I think it makes sort of an interesting thing.
Makes it fun.
Is there a problem that is going that way? I don't necessarily think so. I think it's you don't really know with football. I think, for example, to go back to the previous question, I don't think you necessarily know who the best international football teams are until you get.
They don't play until you get the games, do you?
So it's,
and even then, like the first 2 games they play, they can be absolutely dreadful, and then suddenly everything clicks, and they win the lot. It's
albeit the players are playing the same format of football. They're not coming from far side into
it's not FIFA Street.
yeah. Why so serious? Says England, India, and Australia are the 3 favourites for the top 4 finish. Who do you think will be the 4th? Is it Pakistan or New Zealand, or a wild card like Sri Lanka or Bangladesh? I'm actually going to go with South Africa. I'm feeling hot on South Africa today.
Yeah, he hasn't even mentioned South Africa. Going South Africa.
Okay, well that's okay. Two picks for South Africa. Half from Pakistan maybe, but I do think that Nassim Shah injury is bad. Kishan says Josh Inglis is a good player of spin. Do you think he will play the World Cup opener ahead of others? It's an interesting question. So, if you don't know, Travis Head is ruled out of at least the first 3 or 4 matches of the World Cup, which means that in theory Australia could go with somebody else. They're currently playing, aren't they, Australia? I'm just going to quickly
Mitch Marsh
opened. So I think that probably tells you what they're going to do. Marsh and Warner opened. I would guess that 11 is quite close to the 11 that they play. Interesting that Inglis is playing, batting at 6 and wicket keeping. I think he probably won't make the final 11. I think they'll go back to Carey.
Yeah.
But looking through that team, I think that'll be very close to who plays.
Yeah.
I mean, also kind of interesting. Matt Short batted 8, I think, for them today, which is
pointless, basically.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe they're not taking it that seriously. You can't read it that much.
It didn't work today, but I don't mind the idea of Mitch Marsh opening the batting. I think the way he can take down pace bowling and how quickly he goes at it, I think that could be good fun. Basically, same old as Travis Head, really, isn't it? It could work.
Abby asked us 3 questions that are all predictions. We're going to do a prediction episode before the tournament, so we'll save them, but we might not do surprise of the tournament. So we'll answer that. The other 2 are about, I think, star and flop. So what would be a surprise in the World Cup? I don't know. So, anything. I guess you can say anything. What's going to surprise you? Streakers. Could be loads of streakers.
Yeah. One of India, England, and Australia not making it through to the semi-finals. That'd be a surprise.
It would be a little bit of a surprise, I think. Yeah. I think Pakistan knocking India out of the World Cup will be the surprise.
That would be fire. That'd be pure fire.
I think that's. I've already said Pakistan aren't going to make the top 4, so I'm not sure how that'll happen. But
they can still be the team that India failed to beat to make it through, couldn't they? They could both go out in a blaze of glory.
And then to finish us off, Max, it was quite a tough one. Felice says, best starting 11 for the World Cup, taking 1 player from each team plus 1 extra from a team of your choosing.
Oh, okay.
Right. So
sure, let's take it in turns then. Yeah, we'll take it in turns. You just pick an opener and I'll go, and then you go.
All right. Well, if that's the case, I can do. Max, this is hard. Let's go Devon Conway from New Zealand. This is going to be a bit random, and there's going to be
this is going to be all over the place.
I'm thinking,
are we going to think ahead to what we want, or?
Well, that's what I went. I thought let's get a Kiwi out of the way early and go Devon Conway, because it's him or it's Trent Boult, probably, isn't it, as the Kiwi selection, and Conway is so you go next.
That's a good point. Who's gonna open the batting? We haven't even got Bangladesh's and Sri Lanka's squad announced yet. So,
So can we get Litton Das in there? Is my Shakib?
Litton Das.
Obviously. Okay, Litton Das.
Yeah,
I don't even think he opens in ODI cricket.
Well, he does now.
Yeah, he does. He does now. Well, I'm going to go with Virat at number 3.
Okay, so sure.
Yeah, we're going to end up with an England bowler here, aren't we? That's stupid.
Yeah. Oh no, we can go. Why don't we put Joe Root at number 4?
Okay, Joe Root at number 4. At number 5, the crucial number 5 position. Right. Who? Because it's Clarkson bat 5. I think we can bat Clarkson at 5 in this team. you can't not pick Klaassen, and he's got to either be 5 or 6. So Klaassen, we've got 5 teams, 5 players.
All right.
It's a pretty good team, I think, so far as well. Like,
Yeah.
that is an engine room. Virat, Root, and Klaassen. Like, that's,
Okay, but
that's
who have we
big
got?
runs.
Who have we got left? That's the question.
Well,
Pakistan. We know we can't. We know we're picking
Yeah.
Pakistan. Oh, Max O'Dowd.
Max
Or-
O'Dowd.
Max
Oh,
O'Dowd.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. I thought
Yeah.
we'd have Baz the leader in, but
Oh, we could have as the leader. Yeah, that's true.
Max
I'm just trying
O'Dowd's
to think.
fine, and
Yeah.
it deals with
Or
the Netherlands
Kusal Mendes.
situation as
We
well.
can chuck Kusal Mendes in there.
Kusal Mendes is a great. There we go. And then I think
Yeah.
we can have Baz the leader probably at 7, can't we? So
Yeah.
that's okay. That's actually not a bad team still, and I think we've got. Maybe we move Mendes up 1 and we drop Klaassen down 1. Depends on the situation.
Yeah.
It's good though. Flexibility is what we're all about. Where are we at 8, Max?
So now we can chuck in Rashid
Relax.
Khan.
Genius. I completely forgot Afghanistan were even at the World Cup.
Yeah.
Shaheen Afridi, he can hit, so surely he can bat at number 9. Which nation have we missed?
We
so
haven't
far?
got India. So
No, we have India. We had India.
Do
we had
we?
Virat.
Oh yeah, you went Virat. Yeah,
we
we went Virat.
We do. Do we have an? I don't know if we have an Australian.
Yeah. So
Hazelwood or the Cum Dog?
yeah, or Stark.
Stark. Yeah, let's have Stark. And then as the wild card, Mohammad Siraj has been pretty good recently.
Yeah.
I don't think we've got one spinner.
We've
We
got
could go
one
with
spinner.
I suppose.
Joe Root can bowl
Joe
some
Root
off
can bowl
spin.
some spin. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No, that's a
we'll
good
go
side. That's going to win the World
with
Cup.
Siraj, yeah. It would be up there. It would be up there. You might want an extra spinner, but it's pretty good. Max, I think that's enough for this episode. Thanks very much for listening and watching, everyone. We'll be back with some more World Cup lead-in stuff next week. So do click like, do click subscribe. And thank you very much for supporting the show. Tell your friends, get the word out there. Word of mouth. See you later.